Back in 2001, Bungie released Halo Combat Evolved, an ambitious project that really delivered something completely fresh to console gaming. Unlike the PC landscape, the biggest shooter up on consoles to that point had been GoldenEye 007 for the N64. And while GoldenEye was heralded as a triumph in 1997, everything about Halo Combat Evolved changed how we look at the first-person shooter genre on consoles forever. A mere 4 years after GoldenEye, we saw an evolution of the genre that redefined everything that we thought was possible. The graphics were mind-blowing for the time. The combat, particularly the gunplay, was light years ahead of the competition, and the story was full of surprises that shocked everyone who played it. Simply put, Halo Combat Evolved was a masterpiece. Oftentimes credited with modernizing the FPS genre, Halo Combat Evolved set a new bar that would be difficult to surpass. But somehow, someway, Bungie did surpass the first Halo game. With the release of Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo Reach, Bungie kept raising the bar for what a Halo experience could be. New mechanics provided interesting ways to engage enemies without breaking balance. New weapons meant you could destroy more powerful new enemies. Bigger set pieces created more and more memorable moments, as great set pieces do in video games. There was nothing that was going to stop Bungie from creating a new iconic Halo experience when they were in control of the franchise. But then Bungie left Halo behind, wanting to create a new experience and try another new world without Microsoft looking over their shoulder. And that's where 343 Industries came in. Since taking over the Halo franchise, 343i has definitely been struggling to create the same kind of experiences that Bungie did. Halo 4 was received moderately well, but longtime fans of the series definitely felt the hole left by Bungie's departure. Halo 5 Guardians, however, was seen as a regression in the series. Instead of thrills, the story was criticized for being formulaic and bland. Nothing about it matched the tone of anything the series had presented before, including Halo 4, which was 343's first outing. There was definitely something that had to change, and 343 took 6 years to remake the Halo franchise and bring out Halo Infinite, a 10-year platform for stories within the Halo universe to unfold. Halo Infinite features an open world, a first for the series that is absolutely enormous. It has the player unlocking and upgrading new gear and new weapons. There are bases where the player can set up camp and find NPCs to help them with nearby objectives. All brand new mechanics for the franchise and something to give players long-term investment within the game. But can all these radical changes save the franchise? And how does this all play into the story of Halo Infinite? Hey everyone, I'm Little Bobby. I usually write these things, but today I'm actually presenting this review because I played a lot of Halo Infinite over the past week since its release. Halo as a franchise is very near and dear to me. I'll never forget playing Halo Combat Evolved with my cousin when we were kids. To me, there was never anything close to how well Halo played at the time, especially on a console. The world was enormous and ever-changing, the weapons and combat felt phenomenal, and the story was full of twists and turns that had our heads spinning. I mean, we were kids, we were like 12 and 13 or something. I still remember playing Silent Cartographer for the first time, and that's an experience that will stick with me forever as a gamer. Landing on the beach, having the Warthog dropped off and riding it up towards the canyon, fighting your way through that canyon to the first set of hunters to finally shut down the security so you could get back out to the beach, get stronger weapons, and eventually fighting your way up through more Covenant-infested tunnels to gain more information about the Halo. To me, this is what Halo is meant to be. Missions that are larger than life, that let you feel like an action hero and all-around badass that is Master Chief. So how does Halo Infinite fare when compared to other entries in the series? Well, to be honest, not too hot. And let's get into what works and what doesn't in Halo Infinite. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button to help support the channel, and subscribe for more game reviews and news on 5-9 Gaming Direct. Halo Infinite picks up about a year after the events of Halo 5. The game starts by seeing the Master Chief losing a fight with ArkhIce, the leader of the Banished, which is a group of Covenant outcasts who form their own faction. The Banished blow up the Infinity, a UNSC ship helmed by thousands of troops, and the Chief is left to drift through space thought to be dead. However, the Chief is picked up by Echo 216, a pilot who had been also drifting through the scrap left by the Battle of the Infinity for about 6 months. Echo 216 finds a way to revive the Chief, and doing so asks the Chief to help get him home. Chief says no, he needs to go find a weapon and make sure that the Banished are taken care of. The Chief then sets out to recover the weapon, an AI that's modeled after Cortana that was used as an infiltration unit meant to aid in Cortana's deletion. The Chief also discovers that ArkhIce has since died, leaving control of the Banished to Escharum, another brute warrior who seems to want the power of the Halo for himself to help destroy humanity. The chief also finds out about the Harbinger, a member of an ancient alien species known as the Endless, which are mentioned by Cortana in one of her echoes as something worse than the Flood. The Harbinger is working with Eshram to repair Zeta Halo and bring the return of the Endless, which the chief must stop at all costs. Continuing through, the chief has to fight his way through different installations, stop the spires from reactivation, which would initiate the repair of the Zeta Halo, and learn exactly what caused the destruction of Zeta Halo in the first place. So when it comes to the story, 343 did a decent job of making sure that even players new to the franchise or players that might have skipped a few entries would understand what was going on. Everything is explained sufficiently, even if things are a little heavy-handed. But the major problem I had with the story as someone who's played the franchise for a long time is that it really didn't bring anything new to the table. It ends up with us fighting a faction of brutes, elites, and grunts for control of a Halo. And while the introduction of the Harbinger is supposed to have us fearing the arrival of the Endless, we see no other Endless in the game. It kind of feels a little hollow to have this big new existential threat brought to the table and then not really have any of that pay off. I understand that Halo Infinite is being treated as a platform with the idea that the game will evolve and add new stories over time, but it just felt like not having that brand new faction show up at all was anticlimactic. I would have much preferred that the game would progress the same way, but we at least had a mission or two where the Harbinger had succeeded and we had to stop the immediate threat of the Endless so that we got a glimpse of what terrors we might face as the story moves forward. Another problem, and this is a major spoiler if you have yet to finish the game, is the big reveal involving the weapon in Cortana was something that I guessed as soon as the weapon showed up on screen, which is about a half hour into the game. You see, the weapon is an AI created as an infiltration unit. She's programmed to go into the system, interface with Cortana, and ensure Cortana's deletion. But when we see her, she looks suspiciously like Cortana. She's even played by Jen Taylor, the actor who plays Cortana, but she does use a more playful, youthful sounding voice. She says in her first scene that she was supposed to delete Cortana and then be deleted herself, but for some reason never was. And at that moment I knew she was a copy of Cortana. And the reason she wasn't deleted wasn't for any logical reason in the universe, but simply because 343 had wanted to do a hard reset on Cortana. With where we're at in the Halo story, in-universe Cortana has a set lifespan of 7 years, and in previous games had begun succumbing to rampancy, which is a state of degradation where her functions and personality had become more and more unstable. Instead of taking the risk of creating a new character, 343 simply reset Cortana by creating the weapon, who discovers that she's a full copy of Cortana near the end of the game. Now, I think that Jen Taylor did a fantastic job of portraying this new version of Cortana, and I don't want to take anything away from her performance, but for a title that is meant to shake things up and change how Halo works for the foreseeable future, it really felt like something of a cop-out to not have some sort of new eye that Chief has to learn to work with. But enough about the story. How does the game feel? Halo Infinite feels fantastic to play, at least on normal mode. The gunplay is just as smooth as it's ever been under 343, almost reaching the level of Bungie themselves, which is quite an accomplishment. Every weapon in the game provides a unique feel, and some guns that traditionally have been weaker felt like they were a little stronger than they had been in previous iterations. There's also a lot of new guns that are a lot of fun to play around with, especially in this more open sandbox where you have a little more freedom than we would normally have. Now, depending where you are in the campaign, you can find yourself using any weapon at any time. Personally, I use the Mangler quite a bit for its high damage and its ability to peek shoot, but in a pinch, I might be saddled with an AR and a plasma pistol. The abilities also added something to combat, letting you escape from encounters quickly with the grapple shot or throw up a defensive barricade with a drop wall. All of the abilities can be upgraded as well, leading to some truly fun and fantastic combinations. You might use the threat sensor to detect a group of enemies hide behind a wall, grapple up high above them, and then take them out with a well-timed shot from your rocket launcher, hitting them all at once. Or you might use the thruster to become invisible, and then grapple into a big group of enemies, holding your melee attack down to stun all of them, and then throw a frag grenade at their feet and then grapple out to make sure that you're safe from the blast. Most of my engagements with lower tier enemies involve me grappling into them to stun them with a voltaic grapple upgrade, and then hitting them with a quick melee. I can't stress how much fun that stuff was, especially when you're just playing on the normal mode casually. The grapple shot is definitely the star of the show in Halo Infinite though, with it being used as a movement and combat tool. And if you played Apex Legends or Titanfall 2, the grapple shot will instantly be familiar, as the physics are almost exactly the same as those two games. So if you made a few upgrades to your grapple shot already and you learned the mechanics, you'll be able to travel hundreds of meters in just a few seconds. Combining this with the ability to use thrusters also means you can make quick changes in your trajectory at any time. Overall, the campaign is a really fun experience, despite its incredibly short runtime. I'd wager the campaign clocks in around 4 hours if you skip all the cutscenes. There is a design problem when it comes to legendary difficulty, however. You see, legendary difficulty in Halo has always been punishing. That's what it's meant to be. It requires you learning each room in each mission on every run, memorizing what enemies are there, learning how they might push you, learning what cover you can use and when to use it. Every encounter, even the smallest enemies in the game, can mean death if you don't play that encounter exactly right. A grunt might take 3 or 4 quick shots with a plasma pistol because you stepped out of cover at the wrong time and send you back to the start of an entire fight. As a longtime player of the franchise, I love the challenge of playing on Legendary and seeing if I can still make it through the older campaigns. But in Halo Infinite, all the abilities that you gain seem to make they make the Legendary campaign a little too easy. With the exception of a boss room, I was never reset more than once in a room because if there was a lot of enemies present, I'd simply use my threat sensor to make sure I could see all of them through walls for the entire encounter. If by any chance I ever got swarmed, I could grapple my way up to a high vantage point, and instead of having to learn the encounters, I could basically just cheese my way through every fight that wasn't a boss fight. There weren't many times, even near the end of the game, where I felt the pressure of having to be at my best. And you might say, well, why don't you just not use the abilities? But why would I do that when they're there and I went through all the trouble of grabbing the upgrades? And it's obvious that 343 wants players to use the kit, right? Or else why would they have designed it? And this is all exacerbated even more in the open world, where capturing the forward operating bases, or FOBs, is a secondary part of the campaign experience. Once you capture a FOB, you're able to summon vehicles or restock weapons. And this was a big detractor in my opinion because it meant that you could just go easily from FOB to FOB with a sniper rifle or a rocket once you had it unlocked, which doesn't really take that much campaign progress to achieve. I found myself going with an upgraded tracking rocket launcher and a battle rifle throughout almost all of my time in the open world after making it about halfway through the campaign on Legendary. It assured that I would not ever really be in that much danger while I'd be clearing out an objective, and if I needed that heavy firepower and I needed my rockets not to miss, the tracking rocket would make short work of anything that was in my way. The idea itself is good, but in practice it just made my experience in the open world sections kind of boring. But let's talk about the open world itself, because man, when you talk about boring. I just mentioned how the open world sections were boring because of the ability to grab whatever weapon I wanted at whatever time. That was a real problem, but I cannot stress enough how boring the open world itself is. If you're looking for a beautiful landscape, you can get some great views from high vantage points, but they're similar to a Thomas Kincaid painting, completely drowned out in a single palette of only a few colors. Seriously, the map consists of 3 colors: green, brown, and gray. There are other colors inside the structures you visit in the campaign, but mostly blues and reds from switches or interior lighting that we've seen in other entries in Halo before. I've heard that there's supposed to be weather effects coming, but it raises a question as to why there are none present at launch. Because that might have made the game a little more exciting when playing in the open world. Comparing Halo to something like Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost features so many different colors depending on where you are on the map. You can walk through a forest of trees with golden leaves into a field of beautiful white flowers. Or you might climb a hill and find some gorgeous pink cherry blossom trees on the side that had the leaves fall into the ground and blend in with the green grass. None of that is present in Halo Infinite. There are rocky cliffs, areas of grass and dirt, and steel columns that litter the open world, and that's all. I was so unbelievably disappointed that I scoured the open world once I finished the campaign looking for anything that might change up what I saw, but no. 343 made a map with so little character that even after a 20-hour legendary campaign and a 15-hour normal campaign, I was unable to know exactly where I was on the map without looking at the in-game map. Even areas that seems like they should have had something different about them, like the excavation site area, have the most minor changes. The excavation site area itself only features burned trees that are over some rocky and dirt-covered ground. If you walk away from it, it just blends in and looks like just a big patch of dirt. Compare this to Halo Combat Evolved, where we had snowy areas, beaches, canyons, Covenant ships, and swamps. The world of Halo Infinite lacks any sort of personality its own to distinguish itself from just any open world test engine that you might see. And there were also huge areas of the map that seemed underdeveloped. There were many times where I found myself traversing an area and there would just be nothing there. No enemies, no power-ups, no fun weapons or vehicles to snag, just nothing. I was shocked to see that in 2021, after 6 years of development, there were just areas that had nothing to engage the player. They seemed like they were here to take up space and make the map bigger instead of contributing to the living world. Halo Infinite may be setting itself up for a 10-year adventure, but that is not an excuse to have big sections of your map be completely undeveloped. Develop it and then change it as the story changes. That is what makes it feel like a living world. Now, speaking of living world, here's the thing that makes me most upset about Halo Infinite and the open world thing. It's the comparisons to Breath of the Wild that I've seen. I've seen this so much on Reddit, Twitter, and forums, and I've never seen a more insane comparison in all of my history of gaming. I'm a huge Zelda fan, and Breath of the Wild was truly something that changed the way we looked at open world games. You could chop down a tree, start a fire with your sword using a piece of flint on the wood left over from the tree, and then fly high into the air on the updraft created by the fire that you lit in the open field using the tree you cut down. Or you could harvest Octorok parts and attach them to the boat and then create a flying airship that you could push through the air using a Deku leaf that you got from a tree. The possibilities presented by the sandbox in Breath of the Wild were almost endless, and that's why you see videos on YouTube about people finding out about new interactions between mechanics almost 5 years later. At no point in Halo Infinite was I ever taken aback by what I saw. At no point did I feel a sense of wonder or utter disbelief at any part of the world that I was in. And aside from the one video where I saw someone launch the chief using a warthog that they flipped over with a gravity hammer, I've seen nothing that warrants comparison to one of the most incredible game experiences in the history of modern gaming. Hell, I can even hide behind a tree from a banished airship that's shooting at me with giant cannons and miniguns, and the trees don't budge. What I'm saying is, if you've never played anything but first-person shooters, the open world in Halo might be impressive. But even then, playing Red Dead Redemption 2 in first person creates a much better open world experience for a first person shooter than I think we'll ever be seeing from Halo Infinite, at least what we have right now. Halo Infinite is essentially a live service in its earliest stages, and I generally love live service games. Hell, I'm writing a Destiny 30th anniversary thing right after this. But it's also in that stage of a live service where the idea has presented itself, but it is yet to be fleshed out in any significant way. After so long in development, it's clear that a lot was left behind due to changes in management while the project was already underway. The decent, if not predictable, story serves its purpose for players new and old, but didn't leave me feeling like I had to know what comes next, simply because I didn't care enough about what had already happened. The gameplay is really fun in the moment to moment, but new additions make some of the old staples of the series fall by the wayside. And adding an open world was something that a lot of Halo fans were excited about, but in the end it feels hollow, like the release date of the game was more important than finishing the open world itself. Overall, is Halo Infinite fun? Yeah, it's fun, and that's what is really important when you're playing a video game, is that you're going to have some fun. Just don't expect to have a ton to do after the main campaign. Even on Legendary, it took me a little over 20 hours to clear almost the entirety of the map, which is how long some of my Halo campaigns on Legendary have taken me in the past, but that's been just on the linear journey, not like this grand open world that's supposed to be there. Maybe it's because I'm playing games a lot more now working for a gaming channel, but the challenge just didn't feel like it was there, the way it used to be in older Halo games. But if you've got an Xbox Series X or S or a PC and a subscription to Game Pass and you're looking for something to fill like 20 hours this holiday season, give Halo Infinite a shot. Just don't be expecting it to be a gaming experience that sticks with you long past the time you put it down. If I had to give Halo Infinite a score, I'd say it gets a 7 out of 10, just because while it's fun, it's got all the other problems I mentioned. But hey guys, thanks so much if you watched this all the way through. You're here now, so why not hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you can keep up on all our reviews and news videos as they come out. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. What did you think was the best part about Halo Infinite? Is it the best Halo that's ever been made? Or is it just the biggest? And what has been your favorite part of the campaign experience so far? Let us know down in the comments down below. From 5-9 Gaming Direct, I'm Little Bobby, and I hope we can see you in the next one.